And first let me introduce myself, because there are two authors indicated in this slide that I'm showing to you right now. And of the two gentlemen, I am Balázs Kis, the second one. You can also see my sort of private email address below the name. And please feel free to turn to me with questions regarding this webinar if you somehow didn't manage to ask a question during the webinar. Before we go on, I'd like to point out that there are many approaches to quality assurance in general to translation, and well, at least I can imagine a very broad approach to it that includes the workflow, the linguistic aspects, and there is a very narrow approach that concerns the so-called quality assurance modules that are available in various translation tools, including MemoQ. And today we are going to talk about the latter, like the narrower approach. So we are going to talk about the quality assurance module, what it can and what it cannot do, and how you can make your work efficient using that QA module. If you are concerned with different aspects of QA, please let us know in separate emails, and if there is interest enough. We usually cover that in the team translation webinars, but I'm not sure if there are any of those scheduled for the next month. So if you require more information on that, please indicate in a message to myself or to the marketing department. So today's topic is the QA module in MemoQ, and in connection with that, I'm going to, I'd like to put up a poll among you so that I can see how I should position my presentation and demonstration. So the question is, are you familiar with QA in translation tools? And I'm launching the poll now. You've got 30 seconds to choose an answer. Okay, thank you very much. It seems that half of you are actually already familiar with MemoQ's QA tool, so I await rather advanced questions from you. However, the second half of you is familiar with other QA tools, or not familiar with QA tools at all. So I believe it would be useful to do an introduction, and I hope I will be able to tell new things, even to those who are actually already familiar with the QA module in MemoQ. So we are moving on. This is today's agenda. Like we will start with the QA basics as far as the narrow approach goes, the QA basics of the QA tool. And I'm going to give you some best practices that actually increase your efficiency when you use the QA tool. And during that, I will also give you a live demonstration of what I usually do with QA as a project manager. I'm going to acquaint you with the most important checks just as well. And in the end, again, in a live demonstration, I'm going to introduce you to the specific interface for scanning for and correcting mistakes, how you can do it in various places in MemoQ. So, and during that, please feel free to, well, type questions and comments in the questions pane. I do not promise I will answer them in the same instance, but I'm going to return to them and I'm going to read out everybody's questions aloud and then answer it. So this is how we usually do it. So let's jump into the QA basics. Well, a QA module, because I just cannot fail to note that there is a lot more to quality assurance as such than a QA module. But a QA module will find possible mistakes in the translation, those mistakes that can be detected by a machine, those mistakes that don't require human intelligence to spot. Like you simply don't expect a computer to spot a wrong word order or a wrong wording or maybe problems with the style, because this is something that is usually very much into the meaning of things, and usually a computer is unable to grasp it. But there are very trivial, very obvious mistakes in translation, like numbers are wrong, like the source text talks about 3 apples and the translation somehow contains 6 apples or so. In the meantime, let me just make you think a bit. Please think of situations where having different numbers in the source and the target segment is completely legitimate. Like when the QA module complains that their numbers are wrong, but they are not. What situations can you imagine when this message is actually invalid? Or in a lot of cases, a QA module can spot inconsistent terminology. I'm going to show you how later on during the live demonstration. And there are double spaces, spaces accidentally left before punctuation marks, or spaces missing before punctuation marks or after punctuation marks, like in French, like the way the French quotes are used. And there are many more checks. So a QA module finds things like this. There are many more types of checks in MemoQ. I'm going to give you an overview of those later on, but I believe you get the idea from this. So it doesn't really go into the linguistics of things. It would be great if it could, and we actually have ideas and even experiments to go into it. If we will have time left and you are interested, I can tell you a couple of words about what we are thinking of. But those are not yet in place. So what we are talking about is MemoQ as it is today, like version, I'm running version 4.5.64, the infamous release candidate that fixes a lot of things. And yeah, and if the QA module runs through a translated text, like you see it looks at the source text and the target text at the same time, then you can have a list of warnings it gives you. I'm going to go into more detail on this, but this is the main point here. So you cannot, you do not have to skim through your documents and watch for segments where there is a warning. You can do it because the warnings are indicated in the segments. But you can also have a list, sort it according to various criteria, and work on multiple warnings at the same time, which is not possible if you remain in the grid. We're going to return to that, but this is again a very strong point to the basic operations of the QA tool in MemoQ. And of course it is configurable. So there are a couple of, well, there are a lot of different types of checks. And these checks are categorized into 5 main categories. This is what you see on the dialog box on the left. So you can turn the checks on and off as your task requires. And well, the other statement of this slide is that the QA module of MemoQ is flexible, and this is demonstrated by MemoQ being able to check the segments as you type, well, as you confirm them or as you save them. And you can run the QA in one go as well. For instance, if you are a project manager or reviewer and receive a file in the form of a bilingual document like an XLIF file or an MBD file, you can tell MemoQ to run QA on the file that you just add it to your project, and then you can choose what to run it on. You can even run the QA on translation memories if you wish, and you can directly jump into the list of warnings. So this is what we mean by configurable and flexible, and this is something that I encourage everybody to try. There is already a question. I'm going to read it out because it is very relevant to what is coming. Very often I get a warning concerning false numbers because there is, e.g., an item number such as 12.5, which should stay the same, but the QA tool expected to change into 12.5. How can I tell MemoQ that such numbers do not have to be checked, but others still have to? I believe you just spotted a weak point here, I must say. I'm going to, when I proceed, I'm going to show you what you can do and what you cannot, and what our plans are of doing something about it. So yeah, we are going to return to that. But we are still at QA basics. What you get from the QA module is either warnings or errors. And well, actually the issues that the QA module detects are categorized into two categories, so to say. One is errors. An issue is an error when it prevents the export and must be resolved. But there is only one type of issue that belongs to this category, and this is the missing or extra uninterpreted tags in the target cell, because MemoQ simply doesn't know what's inside an uninterpreted tag, like something that is coming from an old school Word document or coming from a, I don't know what, a format change in an old school PowerPoint or Excel file. And because of that, MemoQ always assumes that if there is a missing tag of this type, when it would attempt to export the document with this tag missing, the resulting exported document would be invalid, as it happened many times when we did tests in the first months of MemoQ in 2005. But let me also tell you that I working on mainly docx, XML, and HTML files. I got more or less rid of this type of tags. So even with other file formats, you can get some uninterpreted tags, but they are very few. So most of the issues come to you as warnings, like terminology spacing, punctuation, or inline tags that are also about formatting or document structure, missing or in the wrong order. But still, the warnings are not fatal. That means that MemoQ will allow you to export the document even when there are QA warnings. But of course, in that case, you should expect that some sort of problems will remain in the exported document, but that the exported document, it is very unlikely that the exported document will be invalid. So it's not like you export a docx and when you open the docx file in Microsoft Word, the Microsoft Word crashes because the file is invalid. This, well, I don't know. Please tell me if it happened to anybody in the audience, but I've never seen anything like that. Okay, let me move on, because now is the time for efficiency. Well, the question I got, I'm sorry, it says Kocsárek Übersetzung, and I don't see the name of the person, so I really cannot attribute it to a particular person, but this is like that right now. So the question is already about false positives. Well, let me approach it in a more general way. When you have a computer and you tell a computer to process human language in any way, then the result of the processing will never be 100% accurate because of unpredictable and not readily observable rules in the irregularities of the human language. So yeah, when you tell the computer to spot specific things in human language, even at this very simple level where the QA module is, there will be false positives. I presume you are also using spell checkers, where you get the same. You get false positives. You get warnings for words that you actually intend to write the way they are written. So, and this is the same with the QA module. And when we talk about efficiency, we always try to minimize the number of false positives that are returned or returned as issued or as warnings by the QA module. Like, there are a couple of advice here, like unneeded, if you don't need a check, you turn it off because you don't want to get the warning in the translation grid or the list of QA warnings. You can go and ignore warnings individually, or you. I don't find this. Very efficient. So I became quite sort of addicted to the resolve errors and warnings list, where I can ignore a group of warnings. I can ignore a full category. Well, if I fail to turn it off, but it turns out to be largely false positives. And and the third part is, third advice is really important. When you go to resolve errors and warnings, you can sort the list by the type of the check for better overview. And then you can use the ignore all warnings of this kind command. And also what you can do is, if there is a type of warning where, for instance, you get 10 warnings of mismatched numbers, like you asked in the question, 12.5 versus 12.5. You can immediately see which of those are and which of those are not false positives. You sort out the genuine ones by spotting them in the list, which is much easier than in the translation grid. And then tell MemoQ to ignore all warnings of this kind. So this, without changing the configuration of the checks, already saves you a lot of time. And, well, it will be much easier to process the list of warnings if you hide the warnings that are already ignored. So when you see a warning, you can choose from two things. You can take action, like correct the target segment where the warning occurred, Or you can say that, well, this is intentionally like this, so I want to leave it at that, and I just ignore the warning. So, but yeah, for those of you who are already familiar with these tools, it's quite an obvious statement that this slide says, but still, this is something you really need to use because the time to quality check a translation is really short, and it gets shorter well as time in time. And but first, it will require you to do a bit of work and do some experimenting, because it took me some experimenting to get the to be able to tell you these things. For instance, that I do not ignore the warnings individually. I do not ignore them in the translation grid, but I use the list of errors and warnings. Or it took some time to figure out what to turn off and what to turn on for a specific time, for a specific type of job. And well, it is really important that at least on the organizational level, it is not wise to standardize. It could be wise to standardize according to the type of the job, but still the types of mistakes and the amount of mistakes could be different from translator to translator. So even when you are checking the work of a specific translator, you might need to tweak the QA setting to spot his or her mistakes efficiently. And because there are, and I'm going into the configuration part right now. Just let me have a look at the important checks are coming, so I'm going to show you the configuration before that. So because there are a lot of different settings in a QA profile, and you might have to use different QA settings for specific types of jobs or specific translators even. It is really important that you can exchange the QA settings between various copies of MemoQ, and you can exchange the QA settings between a MemoQ server and the MemoQ clients in your organization. Let me just show you the basics of how it is configured. So profiles, I'm sorry, this is already the editing window. I'm just waiting for GoToWebinar to tell me that you are able to see my screen. What you see here is the QA settings pane in a local project. And you can see that there are two QA profiles listed. And these QA profiles that contain specific QA settings have become a so-called light resource in MemoQ 4.0. And the resource is something that you can move from computer to another computer. The resource is something that you can share on a server and use through the network on various MemoQ workstations. But there is a trick to tweaking the QA settings in MemoQ. When you create a project, a local project for instance, MemoQ will start using the default QA profile. And if you didn't touch the QA settings before, there will be only this default profile. But then MemoQ won't let you edit this default profile directly. So first, I need to make a copy of it. There's a reason behind it. Sometimes it seems a bit cumbersome, but there is a reason behind it. We supply, QGray supplies a set of defaults with MemoQ, including default QA settings. And we want the users to be able to return to the default if something goes wrong. And the second reason to keep this default read-only is that you get updates from the QGray web server to the program. And these updates also update the default settings. And it would be really bad if you would change the default QA profile, and then MemoQ 4.5.65 is downloading and your settings are gone because the default is overwritten. So this is why we always say that we clone the default QA profile. Well, I already have one that is called default copy, so I'm going to put a number 1 in the end of the name. And here we go. So I made a copy of the default settings under a different name, of course, and it already became, it is already being used in my project. So, and to this one, I can tell MemoQ that I want to edit it. And when I edit it, I get this dialog box, which is really complicated because there are a host of options, and I'm returning to turning to the question, the first question that I got, because there is already an idea that I got, and I'm happy to report that, well, we released the infamous 4.5.62 in early January, that had a lot of bugs and that we had to recall, and this 4.5.64 is quite okay now, it seems. And that one has a lot of new features. There was a message on the mailing list a couple of days ago that says we could have called this 4.6. Yes, we could have. And some of the changes affect the QA checks. So this is something that might be worth pointing out. For instance, here you get a new new option to check the auto-translatables, and here is something that might be a solution for you. So you can, for instance, you can turn off number checks, like this. Either this, I toy with the strict interpretation, or I turn off a number matching altogether. But I set up some number conversion rules in the auto-translatables, and I turn on the check. And well, this helps you in two departments, because the auto-translatables will offer the translators to apply the correct numbers, but also the QA module will check if the auto-translatables are correctly applied. So whenever the auto-translatables are not applied, it will send you a warning. When they are applied, or the text looks as if they were applied, it won't send you a warning. And I believe this would help you go down with the number of false positives, if I get your issue right. Yeah, in the meantime, Veronica has actually put up a comment on this not being able to edit the default settings. She says that still it would be nice if we could see the settings, and this makes an awful lot of sense, and I'm going to check if there is a feature request already regarding that, because it is quite easy to display a read-only dialog box, but this is just an idea. Well, let's go into some of the checks if we are already here. I'm going to give you an overview of the new checks, and then I'm going to go back to the important checks as listed in the presentation. So, like, there is a new check. I don't know what of those are new actually, but warn if target segment equals source segment. I believe that's a new one. And if somebody, because there are people who work like by copying the source text to the target text and then overwriting them, and then when somebody forgets it, then you can get a QA warning. That the target segment equals the source segment when it shouldn't. And I believe warning if target segment is empty and check bold, italic, and underline have existed before. And what else do we have? Well, this check auto-translatables, all the auto-translatables that are used in the project. These are auto-translation rules for those who are not familiar with them. Used to convert numbers, to convert dates and currencies and all kinds of things. I usually, when I work on book translation projects, I usually use it to convert the numbers of figures and tables. So things like that. And well, in the numbers department there is no novelty, and I wonder. No, this has already existed. But then there is the forbidden characters department that didn't exist before. You can say that you don't want to see this or that character in the target text, and you can just type in the characters or put them up using the Unicode number, and then if a character, one of those characters appear in the target text, MemoQ will send you a warning. This won't become an error because foreign characters in a text could be completely legitimate, but there are times when they are not. So this is what you can use it for. And of course, you have the inline tags. And let me just go back to the presentation, but because it has more system to what I am about to talk about. So what we have said is that most important checks include the number checks. Like you can check the number format, like you put up in the question when the QA module expects 12.5. Occur in the form of 12,5 in the target cell. Well, for your information, this phenomenon also exists in Hungarian because Hungarian also uses a comma for the decimal separator and not point like in English. Or the expected number formats can be customized. By language, let me just show that to you, although this is a department that I don't have a lot of experience with, but then you can set up custom number formats for languages, and you can also use languages that are not present in your project. The reason for this is that you can use the same QA profile for other projects that have different languages, different source or different target languages, like, let's say, Bulgarian. Then I can choose a digit grouping delimiter for numbers that are smaller than 10,000 and for numbers that are greater than 10,000, and I can also choose decimal symbol. You see it's not entirely flexible, but still it's configurable. So, and one thing that I haven't experimented with yet, because actually tweaking and going into the depth of QA, especially of number checks, is Gergo's department, not mine. So I don't have experience with that, but you can use or turn off strict interpretation if you want MemoQ to enforce this comma versus space or comma versus point check. And I believe if you turn off strict interpretation, it will look at the number only and not the decimal point and the thousand separator, but I'm not entirely sure. Because if you turn on strict interpretation, well, the section version numberings, like you spotted in the question, will cause false positives. But I'm going to show you another way to work with those false positives later on. And my favorite here is the consistency checks. Because the whole thing, well, at least in my experience, I started off as a book publisher, and I edited a whole lot of books that had to be translated by a host of translators, and 10 plus years ago, well, the publishing company is 15 years old, so 15 years ago already it was a problem that that consistent translation wasn't obvious if multiple translators worked on a single project. So this is something that is one of my favorites here. And there are a couple of consistency checks in MemoQ. The most obvious being the segment level consistency check. So we can check if the same segment was translated the same way, and this and then it will send you a warning. But even this warning might or might not be legitimate, and this is something that you have to look at when you get this warning. It's not very frequent because it cannot appear more times than the number of repetitions in your project. Or MemoQ even spots if different source segments were translated the same way, which might or might not be a mistake again. But these two checks work only if you choose the run QA command. They don't work when you just edit the translation in the grid, because these consume a lot of resources of your computer. It would be slow. The on-the-fly check would be slow if this were turned on. But then, yes, I'm going to return to that. But it's important that it has nothing to do with the TM. So it doesn't look at the TM. It doesn't look at the TM in a way that is this segment translated in the same way as it is stored in the TM. It checks only the repetitions on the source side and the target side. And my other favorite is the terminology check, which, if you haven't seen it before version 4 or version 3.6, you could be grateful, because then it yielded really a lot of false positives, and I don't remember anymore what particular changes were made to them, but it became significantly better. Because the terminology check simply means that, well, here is your project. You are using specific term bases in there, and then MemoQ can verify if the target segments contain the equivalents of terms that are found in the source according to the term bases in your project. This is a fairly standard one. So if there is a QA tool that has access to a term base, it can perform this check. But in MemoQ, it's quite inherent, because everything is within the project, like the QA profile and the term base too. So, and it is really important that you have things like, in the term base, you have like things like the prefix matching and the case sensitivity. It is really important that if you want to get good results from this, you set up the prefix matching both on the source side and the target side. Like you can use pipe characters to indicate where the stem of the word ends. The stem being the first part of the word that doesn't change, and it doesn't work for some languages very well, but for most translation projects it would work quite well. But it's really important that you have to set it up correctly for target as well. And in the meantime, I received the questions from Alexander saying, is there information available on comparison of QA capabilities across tools, for example, MemoQ QA versus Starter Studio QA versus SDLX QA? What I can tell you is there is, but I am not familiar with it and I don't have access to it right now. I'm going to ask marketing to dig it up, because we've got it somewhere. There used to be a comparison chart. I don't have it, unfortunately. And well, I believe this is the last of the most important checks. These are the tag checks. Inline tags, well, pertain to the formatting and the structure of the documents. And it verifies if the target segments have the same tags as in the source. And even if you don't see the full tag content, in the editor, even then the QA can check if the exact same tag is used. And also it can spot the impossible tag order because it's XML in the end. So, or where the tags are interpreted in MemoQ, everything is translated, like in the case of even MIF files or that are not exactly XML, even those are translated into XML first and then imported to into MemoQ. So when it comes to QA, MemoQ already will check them as if they were XML, because within the MemoQ system the rules of XML always apply if inline tags are used. And this is something, again, one of my favorites. It's all the resolve errors tab. I believe there is a list of features here which I don't want to read out. There will be a recording of this presentation later on the website, so you will have access to it. I would rather want to show you what it means. So before we go to questions, I will put you there. Here is my translation grid. It is a translation of a book going from English into Hungarian, and I've got a couple of warnings here. So this is how you encounter them in the grid, and you can skim through the document and simply double click the lightning sign, and then it will give you a list of issues in that segment. But there are problems with that. For instance, if you go to the Resolve Errors and Warnings tab, the problem parts are highlighted. Some parts could be corrected automatically, and you cannot use cannot work on multiple warnings at the same time, even when there is a way to filter your segments for those that contain warnings, so I can filter my view, filter my grid to show only those segments that have warnings. This is not the way I like working. So I usually when I'm working, I'm not, especially if I get the file. If it's not me who is translating the file, but I get the file from somebody, I don't bother about these lightning signs. I go to resolve errors and warnings. There are two ways to this tab actually. One is the run QA command, and this is where I can explain the scope, the term scope that was used in the presentation for you, because the scope is when you tell MemoQ what exactly you want to check, like the entire project, selected documents, active documents, the active documents from the current segment, selected segments, or all the open documents, or the views, or specific translation memories. And if you check proceed to resolve warnings after QA, then it will run the QA according to the current QA profile and go directly into this list. Or I can always invoke this. I can always open up this tab using the operations menu, resolve errors and warnings command, to have a list of all the warnings that I have, like now. And yeah, let me just make an experiment because it pertains. Yes, I have received a lot of questions, so I'm going to go through them. Because, yeah, does the new MemoQ version show the term-based entry for the respective term error? Then in 4.0 that wasn't the case, and I always have to look in the term-based to check what the correct translation should be like. I believe it's still that way, but I have to check. Because what it does, no, it doesn't do it. Okay, so this is again a feature request. What we can see is that it is highlighted, but the term-based entry is not shown. Yeah, that could be a problem that could be speeded up by for instance, being able to press Ctrl P and look at the correct translation. So, point taken. About consistency checks, do I understand correctly that the auto-propagate functions should avoid duplicates, hence consistency problems? Well, yes and no, because the auto-propagate function, well, works within a view or within a file and propagates the repetitions within the file. So within the file or within the view, if you glue the documents together to create a view, it will get rid of the inconsistencies, but sometimes it is precisely the inconsistencies you need. So in principle, yes, the answer is yes, but my advice would be that you be really careful about this, because sometimes it is the inconsistency that you need in specific cases. Okay, when you use the filter status tab, what is the difference between repetition and auto-propagated segment? Yeah, the difference between repetition is that, I wonder if I have anything of the sort in this project. I'm not sure. And if I don't, I won't be able to show you. But the repetition means that a source segment is repeating. Source segment is occurring again. The auto-propagated means that the segment is not only a repetition, but it was already filled in automatically by MemoQ. So when a segment is a repetition, the target cell for it can still be empty. And it becomes auto-propagated only if MemoQ automatically fills in the target segment through auto-propagation. Okay. When will the option for the wildcards in the beginning of terms will be available? For example, asterisk EM will find both M, IM, etc. I'm not pretending that I can read it out properly. It is quite crucial for term consistency check in at least Hebrew and in Arabic. I don't know when it will become possible. I'm going to pass it on to the developers responsible for it. I hope I managed to reply to your questions. Well, basically this was it. This was the overview of the QA module in MemoQ. I'm going to look at a couple of things. Let me just recap. Like ask marketing for comparison of different QA tools, or even an independent survey might be available that I don't know about right now. And I also have to submit a feature request for showing the term-based entry and also term-based matching, matching term-based entries. So it's by changing the first part, like the wildcards in the beginning. What else? Yeah, and the read-only display of a QA module. This is not a promise that they will be there in the next release of MemoQ, but they stand quite a good chance. So let me just go back here. Thank you very much for your time, for your attention today. I hope you found the webinar helpful and useful. Please feel free to send me questions in an email, and before you go, I just want to ask for your input again in a poll for 30 seconds from now. Thank you very much for your input, and thank you very much for your attention and questions and ideas. We make a lot of benefit from this, and we are really thankful for your input every time. So I'd like to thank you for your time again, and I look forward to meeting you in another webinar or even in person. Thank you very much. Have a great evening.